John!
Yes.
Welcome.
Yes.
This is the Honorable John Burt. I'm Representative Gary Hopper and Carla Gericke. I always have Gericke is our guest tonight. I just mess that up every time.
Just pretend there's not an E on the end.
No, I'm a little. Well, the thing is, I'm just a little stressed out. I had to declare bankruptcy yesterday.
Why?
Well, I live in Ware, and I have
Yes.
easily the best well water on the planet. It tastes wonderful. If you taste even bottled water, my water tastes better.
Wow.
And so I've been I started a business last year, and I started bottling it, and I've been trying to sell it. And in almost a year, I have not been able to sell one bottle of Hopper water.
Really? No. I don't know what to believe.
Hopper water. No, you don't. Okay.
No, I don't. Straight over my head. I'm
no,
sorry.
it went over my head. Did the viewers get it? That's the biggest.
I hope
Yes.
so. Some of the older ones. It used to be that Hopper was a euphemism for the bathroom toilet.
Okay.
So anyway,
Yeah, sorry.
That bombed.
Sorry.
So the viewers at the nursing home are laughing.
Yes, our viewers in the nursing home are just dying or
Yeah.
or
I was excited about your great water.
Yeah.
It actually is really great. It really is good.
Good well water. That's
It's really
great.
good well water. Okay, so I wanted to start off with a few things. We got to go over question 1, question 2, over your Senate candidacy, but I want to start out with media bias.
Okay.
What?
No, I know, really. It's
Say
hard
it
to believe.
isn't so.
Well, okay, here's the easiest way to if people think that the media is fair, all you have to do is look back when Obama took office.
Yes.
Okay. He got a Nobel Peace Prize for doing nothing. Trump is actually almost has a complete peace treaty with North Korea. Crickets.
Yep.
Right? It's amazing. My dad fought in the Chosin Reservoir in Korea, people dying all around them, freezing to death. It was hugely tragic war. And it's been going on ever since. There were people still dying on that DMZ for years and years and years. And to have peace in North Korea is so profound that it boggles the mind, yet because he's Trump, they're not going to cover it.
Yeah.
But here's a simpler one that I think everybody can remember. When Michelle Obama took office, all of the morning shows and all the people, she would go on show after show after show.
The View.
The View, all of them were praising how beautiful she was. Okay? I thought it was rather irrelevant,
Yes.
personally,
Yes.
that how pretty the First Lady is, but whatever. So they went on and on and on and on, and as soon as Ivanka Trump takes office, so to speak, nothing. They've attacked her ever since she took office.
Melania?
Melania, I'm sorry, Melania. Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, right?
Yeah.
They have, like,
but
they
she
have-
wears high heels, some wears that should have been sneakers, and they have to spend a
But
week.
they
doing
totally,
that.
they trash her.
Yeah.
They attack her. She gets death threats. And Michelle could have walked on water. They treated her like she walked on water. That just shows you the complete perversion of the media and what so-called news is.
Well, but there is one thing with President Trump that I'm still not over with. I'm sure I'll vote for him, but I still am hung up on this one thing.
Yeah.
That he had 2 scoops of ice cream.
Yeah, I know. That was pretty brutal.
Oh, they beat him up for what, a week? 24 hours a day. We heard about 2 scoops of ice cream, and I'm like,
if you look at the last election, okay, so first you had to go into it quickly. I'll try to do this really quickly. Beginning of 2016, or the middle of 2016, they came up with this Russian collusion hoax.
Right.
yeah.
They used that Russian collusion hoax and a fake dossier to spy on the Trump campaign. Every time in the past, when a candidate had when the FBI or Secret Service, whoever, was concerned that some candidate might have a spy, you know what they do? They go to the candidate and says, hey, you guys got to watch out. There might be a spy amongst your midst, and we're keeping an eye on it. That's what they would do because they care about the country. That's not what they did to Trump. What they did is they planted spies in his campaign and used it to justify, but it was to spy on his campaign.
I mean, but in some ways, that's surely the definition of the deep state, right?
It is, right.
It's where, people are kind of acting for the interests of their different departments.
To perpetuate the deep state.
Yeah.
So then it goes on from that, and they believe it's like 1,000,000,000 chance that she's going to lose. She loses. I have been around for a long time. I have never, ever seen an attempt to try to change the Electoral College after the election.
Yeah.
Never seen that. Then they continued with the deep state and attacking him and coming up with this Russian collusion crap. There's still zero evidence on Russian collusion. There's evidence that one of the guys that worked with him once for a short while in 2007 did some unethical things, and so they prosecuted him for it, but that's about it.
Well, wasn't there also this story, and I have to confess, I made a decision about a decade ago to stop watching any of the news,
I don't blame
regardless of which station. I get it from my feed, or I get it from the newspaper, right? Because the news cable shows are really sort of designed to irk us and to pit us all against each other.
Right.
But wasn't there a story this week about Trump using his phone that was unsecured to make phone calls? And so there was this huge hoopla where they were saying, you're having, top secret phone calls and you're not using a secure line and this whole thing. But then it's like, well, when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, she was using a unsecure private server
And phones.
to pass classified
And
information.
and guess who she was communicating with?
Russia.
Obama,
Also.
Russia.
I mean, she did that Russian deal where they sold 25% of the uranium to Russia.
Yeah, I know. So,
But that's crickets. But we hear crickets.
there's
Right.
nothing. There's not. That's not really that important. Because then they go after. They've gone after him, and the series of attacks on Trump have been relentless. There was a Harvard study recently. 90% of the news about Trump is negative. Over 90%. That's not possible. You've got the economy's going good. We just had the confidence in the market is higher than it's ever been. The unemployment's lower than it's ever been. Minority
50
unemployment
years.
is lower than it's been in 40 years. All the barometers of how well our country is doing are super great. Okay, except the media. Okay, so this is just. I'm going to cut it after this because we got to talk about other stuff.
And why aren't they reporting on one major thing that I'm happy to see? What's this?
Is this
Exis?
ice cream again?
No, the Exis.
ISIS.
Exis. The Democrats are leaving in.
Oh yeah.
There's a special name out there.
Yeah,
and I can't remember
what
what it's
it
called.
is. It's
the Democrats
Walk away.
walk away. That's what it is, and they're saying
leaving the party.
They're leaving the party,
yes,
yeah.
and I think we're going to see that next Tuesday.
So
I
anyway,
hope so.
Yes.
so I wanted to share this with you, and this was said today by Don Lemon, CNN. Now think about this statement. So this is a direct quote. This is not. I listened to the actual video before I posted this to make sure. So we have to stop demonizing people. We have to stop demonizing people, right? Good. That's a good start. And realize the biggest terror threat to this country is white men.
Uh-oh.
So he starts his sentence off with, we got to stop demonizing people. By the end of the sentence, he's demonizing white men. Now, let's say it was a white person saying, we have to stop demonizing people and realize that the biggest terror threat to our country is black men. If I said that, like I meant it, it would be done. You'd be drawn and quartered.
Yeah.
But this racist can be on CNN, and it's totally okay. The New York Times hired a racist to be one of their commentators just 2 months ago. She hates white men. I'm sorry. Anyway, that's as passionate as I'll be tonight. It's just so, the media is so perverted. They are, like you said, they are deliberately trying to drive a wedge between the American people. A statement like that can only drive a wedge between people. It is not intended to unite anybody.
Well, and also it's just on the face of it, how can you start a statement with saying we have to stop demonizing and then actually call out a group?
And then demonize people at the end of the statement. Yeah. It's so profoundly ignorant and hypocritical. It's mind blowing. And then in the last couple of weeks, remember when the that nutbag shot up a bunch of congressmen?
Yeah.
They were practicing for the softball team. They almost killed the majority whip. I forgot his name, but the majority. They almost killed him. They shot a bunch of other people. He was a Bernie Sanders campaign worker who was upset after the election and went to just kill Republicans. Nobody tried to say it was Bernie Sanders' fault. And Bernie Sanders was visibly upset that one of his campaign workers would do something that horrible. Okay, nobody made that connection. I mean, they knew who he was. There was a connection, but it was not Bernie's fault. Okay, so you had some nutty guy. First of all, they made him out to be white, but he's actually American Indian. But anyway, so you had this nutbag down in Florida who sent crappy bombs around the country. And he was at a Trump rally, and he had Trump stickers. So the news media in the last week has tried to paint that as Trump's fault. Then you had some dirtbag go in and shoot up the synagogue. They tried to make that look like it was Trump's fault. And that guy hated Trump. So you have one guy that hates him and kills people, and it's Trump's fault, and one guy that loved Trump, and it's Trump's fault. And they even went so far as the rabbi for that synagogue, they CNN, I think it was CNN or MSNBC, are interviewing him, and they're interviewing him, and they're trying to get him to say that Trump's responsible.
Yeah.
You could listen to the words very carefully. They are trying to get him to say that, and he wouldn't bite.
Yeah.
And they said, well, do you know that Trump wants to come down to your synagogue to pay his respects? And he said, our president's always welcome. They were upset that he said that. They wanted him to. So the media is so twisted.
But it's not just the media. The media is sort of a part of the problem. But I think it's also just, we choose not to take personal responsibility anymore. I mean, the person who shoots someone, that's the problem. It's not the gun's problem, and it's not the president's problem. It's no one but the person who takes the action.
Correct.
Now, there may be mental health issues or whatever, but that's also internalized to the person. And then the other thing is we have to stop thinking we can solve our problems with violence. And that has to start from all of us as well, right? In the sense that, I talk a lot about government as force. And what I mean by that is every law is backed by the barrel of a gun, right?
Correct.
So if you're not willing to go shoot your neighbor for whatever the thing is that you suddenly want us to do, then maybe we shouldn't do it. And so I think there's an unhealthy balance in our country because people are upset. They're upset because the government's too big, because the government has a finger in every single pie, in every aspect of our lives. Politics has taken over, and it's not how it should be. We should be free to live our lives, to join our communities, to hang out, to go to barbecues, have fun on Halloween. And, it's just...
Yeah. If government was, specifically the federal government, but if government was run the way it was intended, nobody should care who's president.
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
And that's what I mean when I say the stakes have gotten too high, because we have these two polarized groups that have been polarized because who does that benefit? The federal government.
Right.
They get to grow and grow and grow and take more and more of our money.
Well, why they hate President Trump so much is because he is a threat to their agenda,
Yes.
which is not America.
Yeah, actually, it's funny because the first thing when Trump took office, immediately they started calling him a tyrannical, right?
Yeah,
and a
authoritarian,
fascist, tyrannical,
Yep.
which is insane because he, unlike Obama, the first thing he did was try to reduce the power of government.
Yeah.
So tyranny is trying to increase the breadth and scope of government to oppress the people, where he was doing the inverse, and they still called him a tyrant.
You know, but I mean, I think to be frank, there are
Why
actually
do
a
you
lot
wanna
of
be frank?
younger.
You got identity?
There are, people who actually think that bigger government is somehow going to solve problems. Like, they don't think the entire process through, right? You can't, or if someone could show me the example of the perfect large government that isn't tyrannical, authoritarian,
Right.
and ends in, death, destruction, pain, and poverty, then, I'd like to hear that. So people they're like, oh no, but we're going to do it right, and we're going to have this big government. Or when Obama's there, it's big government and it's good. But when it's Trump, and it's like,
Yeah.
nothing has really that significantly changed either, if we're looking just in size and scope of government.
Right. Yep.
Well, one thing that I did like what President Trump did was the fines. I had, on Obamacare, if you didn't have Obamacare or some insurance, you were paying a big fine.
Which was an insane proposition.
Yeah.
That you're fined. They're penalizing you for not having
buying
insurance.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not buying something.
And what happened
They
is,
should have done that with cars.
well, there was a constituent of mine up
if
in
you
Ware.
don't buy a new car
Yeah.
every year,
Yeah.
we're going to fine you $1,000 a day.
Isn't that pretty much what our registration inspections are every 2 years?
Yeah.
Close.
But
Yeah,
but there was a constituent of mine up in Ware that was going to lose his home over it. So
Wow.
there's a lot of people out there that own homes, and what do they call it when they're home poor? So
Yeah,
you own a
yeah.
home, but you don't have a lot of
Underwater.
money.
Yeah.
Under
Well, I mean-
a hopper's water.
Yes.
Wow.
But the problem is he says, I can't afford this, and I can't. Now what do? Do I pay the Obama tax, or do I pay my property tax? Both of them are going to get me evicted out of this house, and I want to save my house. He said, this isn't what I signed up for when I bought this house.
Yep.
He says, I could afford this house. Now I can't.
Right.
Because of, and luckily President Trump got rid of that.
Yeah, and and the tax cuts, people like to say it was just for the wealthy, but certainly
Not
everyone
really.
I've talked
Well,
to.
the thing is that's another distortion of the truth.
Of course.
Because the top 20%, I forget what the percentages are. You can don't quote me on the exact numbers, but the top 20% of the population or working population pays like 80% of the taxes. So if you go across the board and reduce taxes by 10%,
Which is coming.
Which if you just take that example, obviously they're going to save more money than the guy who's only paying $50 a year in taxes, because he's only going to save $5, right? Whereas they're saving $50,000.
Right.
It's just logical and reasonable, but the Democrats try to make it out like, oh, only the rich are getting richer. Well, so what? The poorest person in this country is still much more wealthy than most of the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Oh, much more. Yeah.
Well, they all have
And-
flat screen TVs.
And, we should just, take it back to what we know the recipe of success is. What made America wealthy and a successful country was the belief in individual liberty.
Yep.
It was the belief in letting the
Personal
markets work.
Personal responsibility.
Yeah, and those things create prosperity because it allows, it creates jobs. Someone could be like, oh, I want to offer X kind of healthcare for this specific thing. And you can go off and you're like, I need that. Or but,
Yeah.
healthcare is a disaster, quite frankly, because
Well, it's run away.
It's run away, but it's also, we're trying to solve a problem, but we're like mashing up sort of big business corporatism with socialism, and that's like the worst recipe. So that's why everything's expensive, and
And they get protection. They have, because there's so much money in it, they have really good lobbyists to make sure that those
Right.
laws are written
Yeah.
that help this company or that company, and who ends up losing? We do.
Right, which is, why I'm
Which
running
is-
for office, so that we can restore our rights and so that we can be the people who are winning.
The insanity of it is you had a I forget what his name is, an actor in Hollywood said that if Trump is not stopped, there will be blood in the streets. That was yesterday, right?
Wow.
Yesterday. Okay, so I looked it up. The guy's worth $8 million. I bet you $50, right? That there's no way it's going to be his blood in the street.
No.
And there's no way he's going to be involved. I mean, he might pay for other people to cause trouble. He might incite violence.
You mean
but
like
he is-
Soros?
No, it's not Soros. He's only worth
But
$8
like
million.
him.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
So you got people like that who have become wealthy because of capitalism.
Yep.
There is no way that guy would ever become worth $8 million in a communist country because they aren't willing to, there's not enough money for people to go and see movies.
Well, and the other thing is, with income redistribution or wealth redistribution, once you actually start to drill down into the numbers, you realize, I mean, it's a fool's game, right?
Right.
I'm not going to remember the exact numbers, but let's say generally speaking, I mean, you could take all the money from all the billionaires in America, and we wouldn't even be able to fund the federal government for an entire year.
Right.
So then the question becomes, okay, let's say we take all the money from all the rich people. What do we do next year? Okay, now we see. And so the question becomes, and the thing that people need to think about is, where does that wealth come from? How do we generate it more? Why aren't we all trying and striving
To generate more
and
wealth
then
as opposed to trying to rip people off.
Right, and then the question becomes, someone asked me the other day about affordable housing. And I'm like, yes, affordable housing sounds like a great idea, but do you know how you get it? Is by deregulating
Yes.
so that people can actually decide. Maybe like one guy is like, I don't want to keep my building up 100%, but the people who live here are willing to pay less in rent. That's what the market does. So that's where we need to move towards. And, I've been beating this drum for a long time now, but, the recipe is there. We just need to remember it. And
Yes.
Yeah, you can't. We had Bob Gaida on, and he had a bill in last year, and it's actually pretty cool. It basically said, let's say, because you're right, most of the reason we don't have affordable housing is because if you want to build, say, a 20-room apartment building, how are you going to get the permits? Right?
Yeah, it's permits, it's
whose butter
zoning.
whose bread do you got to butter? And then you got to work the zoning out with this guy, with a fire.
It's the fires,
Yeah.
like all of it.
All of it, and then they can still put the kibosh on it. So if you want to build that 50 apartment building, instead of taking, it should take 3 months to get all those permits. There should be a site plan. They do a test to make
It
sure.
should take a day, sir.
Yes.
Well, anyway, it should be a very, very
Private property.
limited amount of time because you don't want to build fire hazards. And so I disagree with you a little bit. I mean, there's a certain rational reason to have some sort of regulation. But what Bob Gaida's bill would have done is, okay, so you've gone through all the paperwork, you've done all the permits, you've done everything that you were supposed to do. And they still won't give you the permit because you haven't maybe paid somebody off. Maybe somebody doesn't like you. So his bill would have created a board that would supersede the planning board only after you've gone through all the regular process, and so that you could get something built in spite of, and as long as you're meeting all the requirements, you can still get your plans built.
Well, we need that in Goffstown.
But genuinely, because I serve on the Right to Know New Hampshire board, and that's all
Right
about.
committee. We always get right to know stuff.
I've only been there about a year. I mean, I've been following along, but actually, actively working on it. I'm the secretary, so I get to make the notes. But one of the things they were working on was this ombudsman bill, right? Where
Yeah.
it was basically like, we have an issue, the courts are overloaded, let's create this other commission that can look at these things. Very similar to Bob's
Yeah.
thing.
I was on that planning for that. So.
My concern is government's already too big.
Yeah.
It can't do the job because we wrote too many laws and we're trying to control too many things. And then it's like, now we're going to create another branch over here, and we're going to do, because there's a real need to address these things.
Right. So to explain that, I was on a commission not this past summer, but the summer before, and we came up with a bill. Bob Guida was the prime sponsor. I think I was a co-sponsor. And basically what it says is, right now, if John wants to go to Goffstown, and he goes to Goffstown, and he says, well, I want to know where you spent X, Y, and Z. And they said, no, we're not going to get that to you. Sorry, dude. Okay, his recourse right now is to take them to court. Well, unless John knows all the laws and knows how to file the right paperwork, or is willing to hire a lawyer, he's kind of up the creek without a paddle. And so unless you can get a lot of people together, or it's a big cause, it's very difficult to get that done. Bob Guida said it best, is that your tax money goes into those documents. You own them, not the town. And you should have every right to access those anytime you really want.
And I mean, the New Hampshire Constitution talks about, government should be transparent and open and all these things. And so, I mean, a very simple solution in my mind, in any event, I'm not sure if this has been explored before, but would be to just simply say the default setting is you disclose. Like if someone comes in, they're like, I want this.
That already is.
No, see, but they don't. We have the AG's office has people on staff now who redact information. That's like their job. Yeah. And, you do not have access. I mean, there was this case out of Keene with the poor college students, right? Who they were doing it for their journalism class, and they were like, oh, we're going to file some right to knows with the local police department. They didn't get one. That's gone all the way to, it's past court. Part of the decision was good, part of it was bad. So I'm like, why don't we just make the default, you give whatever the person's asking for, and if you don't want to give it, then you have to go to court, and you have to make a case, the state has to make a case for why they should not disclose it, because that is what the Constitution says. And speaking of the Constitution,
yes,
look at me helping. We should talk about the amendments, right?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Wait, what time we got? What time we got? We got still time?
Do we have time?
I got the wrong button.
Yeah,
we got plenty of time. Okay, okay. Amendment 1.
All right. Amendment question 1 as
Question 1.
So after they vote for all Republicans,
yes.
Then they get to the
down
bottom.
After you just go all Republicans all the way down the line.
Yes.
The next order of business is the 2 amendments. Article 1 is
taxpayer standing.
Taxpayer standing.
So restoring that.
And that was passed overwhelmingly. I think there was like 7.
It was 309 to 9 in the House, and it was 22 to 2, and my opponent, Lou D'Alessandro, voted against it.
Oh.
So 22 to 2, and Lou was 1?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And basically, I mean, just, for the viewers back home, all it does is restore a right we've always had that kind of got stripped away in 2010 with the courts. And it just restores your taxpayer standing so that in a case where a tax cap is busted, or you're like, there is weird malfeasance with our fees, or in the case that happened with you guys out in Goffstown with that $10 million they found.
Oh yes.
Where they said, oh, so we'll just keep it and disperse it and use it, and it's like, no, it's your your property taxpayers' money. Give it back to them. Yep. And so really, it should be non-controversial in terms of...
Yeah, as long as people understand it.
Yeah, it's a little wordy.
It's a little wordy, but so just to simplify question 1. Okay, so you gave a good example. So you live in Goffstown. Currently, they take the $1 million and they give it to different departments instead of giving it back to the taxpayers.
The 10 million.
The 10 million. I'm sorry, 10 million. currently, if John goes and sues they go to the town, first you would go to the town meeting or whatever and say, hey, what the heck are you doing? And they say, John, take a hike, we don't want to hear from you. Now you have no recourse, really, except for the courts. So you go to the court and say, look, they got this $10 million. We got a question, line 1 in a second. You got this $10 million. We're going to sue the town to get them to distribute it back to the taxpayers like they should. But the court has said, because John isn't unusually adversely affected by the ruling, he has no standing.
Right, and
which
that's
is insane.
That's literally making the argument because you are only one of the taxpayers.
Yes.
You are not a taxpayer.
But 20 years ago,
You know?
we used to be able to sue.
Oh, sure,
We
yeah.
got line 1. So
hit this?
yeah. Hello, welcome to Rock Paper Hand Grenades.
I almost think they hung up.
They did? Who would hang up on us?
Yep,
I
they
guess
did.
so. But yeah.
Can you tell them to call back?
Oh, you can say it on the air. Call back.
And I one of the reasons, as I understand it, that it had bipartisan support is partly because the Democrats are concerned about the school choice that I think is going to move in that direction. It's certainly a priority for Governor Sununu, and if elected, that's something I want to work on.
Me too.
For all the reasons, because competition creates better stuff, and we should give our kids good educations, or give them the choice to explore or to do it the way that they learn. So my understanding is the support from the Democrats came because they realized they would be unable to sue if school choice passes. They would not be able to sue because of the lack of standing, and that is really the reason why they supported it. Now, I personally think taxpayer standing is something everyone should have.
Sacrosanct.
It is not a partisan issue at all. It's an issue of,
Do you have the right to hold your government accountable? Period. That's
Yes.
all it's about. Is accountability.
Yep.
Okay, question 2.
All right, question 2 is about is about privacy, and it's a one sentence.
Is it privacy or privacy?
Are you making fun of my accent? It's a one sentence, and this is how it's going to appear on the ballot, and it just says an individual's right to live free from government intrusion in private and personal information is natural, essential, and inherent. And that natural, essential, and inherent actually comes from, so this would become Article 2B of the New Hampshire Constitution.
Or not to be.
Or not to be. That is the question. That is the second question.
Oh yeah, right.
But that language is just basically mimicking what is in 2A. So it's just trying to keep it in that sort of flow and language. And this was sponsored by Neil Kirk and I believe Cushing.
Oh, yeah.
And their concern, quite rightly, is with government snooping. I mean, we do know that the surveillance state is a real thing.
It's
And it's
growing.
growing. And so this, my understanding is Neil Kirk is like a big privacy guy. And, he's worked on these things for a long time. And so the thinking was, if we can actually get something in the Constitution, because the Constitution doesn't actually talk about privacy.
Right.
Privacy. Which one is it? Now I'm confused. You confused my
Sorry.
accent brain. Privatheid. There we go. A little Afrikaans for you. Is just to, basically say, the right to live free from government intrusion in our private and personal information. So our phones, our laptops,
our cell phones, because back when they wrote this, 250 years ago, we didn't have cell phones.
Right.
Well, there was the ability for the state to collect information on
Yes.
you was extremely limited.
Yeah.
Because 200 years ago, they would basically have to go out to your house and figure out what you're doing and then keep track of it. Right now, they can. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a 14-year-old son, and they're online and they're talking with their friends and they're busting each other. And they say, if you've ever listened to boys, they can be pretty brutal and say things that are probably completely inappropriate. Okay, so they're 14, they're doing this. Your local sheriff or maybe the state, somebody keeps that. They start collecting that.
Yep.
They collect it. Now this same child is 28, and he's looking for a job with maybe the government, and they call up the local police and they say, well, he said this, this, and this. They talk to your son and say, well, why did you say that? That was 10 years ago, 14 years ago, dude. I don't remember what I was. I don't have any idea what.
Probably be like, oh, I was stupid and young.
Right, but that won't be good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
no.
So basically, everything you do that used to be behind closed doors and used to be disappear after it was said, now is
stored.
storable.
Yeah, and I think another good example is, to my knowledge, they don't do this in New Hampshire, and I hope we never would. But other states are actually starting to do like roadside DNA testing at traffic stops, and they will swab you, and
That it can't
And what
be.
happens if you say no?
I think you get arrested and you go fight that out. And so part of that is also something like your DNA, right, is obviously private. It's, and
this will protect it?
I would think so,
yeah.
Because the DNA people are giving out their DNA like it's
to not
like
put
it's-
it in a database or something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of, it's as technology, we're sort of in an arms race between freedom and the surveillance state, let's say. I mean, we're in a lot of arms races.
Yes.
I'm in a peace race.
Now, I support Article 2, the second
Question 2.
question 2.
Yeah.
But there are a few out there, ultra-conservative group, Cornerstone, that, says something about abortion or something like that. I don't
heard about
understand.
this. Does
why-
anyone know because
No,
it
I
doesn't
don't
make
get it.
sense to me. I mean, it
it doesn't.
specifically says information, right?
Yeah.
And sure, there's a concern. I mean, one of the criticisms I've heard is it's vague. And it's like, well, it's not more vague than anything else that's in the Constitution.
It's supposed to be vague.
It's supposed to sort of fit in with the language. And look,
Well, not only that, it's not statute.
right, exactly.
Okay, statute is one thing, and the Constitution's another thing. Our Constitution is the guideline to direct us how to write statute,
Right.
and that's it. And that direction is quite clear. And I think Cornerstone's full of baloney.
Yeah, I think I absolutely don't get it either, and
Because-
I'm definitely voting yes.
Oh,
on
I'm still
2,
voting
too.
yes.
Because
Yeah.
they're
And just for the record, Lou voted no on this one too.
So what do
No
you think
way,
the
really?
2 and 9
I
that voted against this? Well, on Article 2 or question 2,
so
there was a
question
few
2,
more.
it was close, a
But
little
it
closer,
has to pass
but it
by
was party
2/3.
line. It did have to pass by 2/3, so it did have a bipartisan
Yes.
majority. In the Senate, it was 15-9, so it was a lot closer to sort of the breakdown of the Senate. So it was a little more party line.
as far as the argument I heard, it was about protecting abortion clinics is the reason they're worried about question 2. But the fact of the matter is, if a woman goes in for an abortion, that is a medical treatment, and that information is already protected under HIPAA.
Yeah.
You can't give that information out. The information as a legislator that I want is statistics, like how many abortions are performed at what I was going to say trimester.
Yeah.
What semester, what trimester they were performed at, and things like that. But that's not specific to any one individual woman. Okay, so I think that,
Right, and I mean,
and that's, but we've never even been able to get that information anyway. So I don't know what they're whining
no,
about.
and it seems like a bit of a last-minute red herring. I
Yes.
started hearing that today, and
Yeah.
I was like, look, I know the intent of what it was supposed to be, and sure, you know what, it at some stage is going to be litigated, but I can assure you the first cases aren't probably going to be about abortion.
No.
It's going to be about, are you allowed to take this information?
Which-
Did you take my phone and search it without a warrant? Did
Right.
you,
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, a thing is that DNA is your blueprint. It's everything. It is such a powerful tool that could be used against you.
Yeah.
That it should not be in the hands of anybody that you haven't given
Well, by
express
force.
permission.
Like I did my 23andMe because I was curious.
Right.
But that was voluntary. That was.
Where does the do they have a right to that
So
information?
they claim that they also strip out any identifying information. So they take the data, they give it to you. That's an encrypted private transaction. But then they do, if you consent to it, they add it to a database that strips out who you are, but sort of puts out data so that people can learn stuff about things. And then, I mean, there are other services. Once again, isn't the free market awesome? Some of them are, where it's people specifically looking for birth parents or family members. So there, obviously, you want to be able to find the person. So that's a different sort of scenario. So there are choices out there. But the thing is, obviously, with our relationship with the government, it's like you don't want that database where, 15 years later, something's going to come back and bite you in the butt.
Well, it's not only that. It's the idea that you have your 14-year-old kid is now 40 or 50, and he's looking for a job, and the government, okay, because they have the information, looks at his DNA and says, no, we can't hire him. The probability of him having a hardening of the arteries is about 75%.
Yeah.
So we're not going to hire somebody 50 years old who has that high a probability, right?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, we can't really predict, right?
I don't mean to keep picking on your kid. By
No,
the way,
no. But I mean, I've said this. When I go and talk at colleges sometimes and stuff, and one of my questions to them is always, when you watch, because we're trying to sort of predict the future, right? And it's when you watch a sci-fi movie, let's say The Matrix or The Hunger Games or The Matrix, it's like, who do you root for? And they're all like, Neo. I'm like, so why in real life are you rooting for Agent Smith? Everything we're doing is empowering Agent Smith. Stop it.
That actually is a great analogy. I've never heard that.
Okay, good. Yeah, everyone repeat it. Let's make sure. let's make it a trend. Because
make it a meme. Can you make it a meme?
I probably could. Yes.
That should be a meme.
The thing about having, I've always wanted to know, especially now that Elizabeth Warren is definitely Indian. I've always wanted to know, because I come from England in 1690s.
Okay.
We came, so I've been here a few years. I want to know, I wonder what's in me. But even a private company, because I've seen the NSA and the government go to ATT and force them
Google, all of them,
to turn over information. I'm going, I'll just keep John Burt.
Well, that's the thing is that's what some of the liberals say. Well, look, we caught this guy who did this. So?
Yeah.
So? You're willing to concede all your liberty? Because we could do that. We could have constant surveillance. We could have a monitor planted in your brain so they know what you're doing at all times, and everybody
Don't
would be
give them
safe.
ideas, Gary. I mean, in some ways, that's what our phones have become, right?
Yeah.
They are really, they're sort of the heart of. It's like having a diary together with more than that.
That's
even know.
actually why I only post jokes and political stuff.
Yeah.
You'll see almost no personal information except for my water bottling thing.
Yes.
But that was, that was tragic.
Well, another thing that really irks me is these checkpoint Charlies we have. Where the police stop you at gunpoint, basically, because they have guns. But what I tell everybody and there's a ton of people out there that support them, a lot of my friends. John, if it gets one bad person. I said, all right, what street do you live on? Well, I live on Franklin Street. All right, I want a checkpoint every day that you leave your house on Franklin Street. It will make you safer. Really? Right? And they said, well, I don't want to be inconvenienced.
Right.
Well, you just inconvenienced 4,000 people on the highway.
Well, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Well,
And if it just saves one person's life.
Well, and I
mean, can we just that argument?
You know what most of them.
I am ready with a slew, but not for today.
But most of them,
I want to hear that.
But most of them, what I like is they catch pimply faced kids with marijuana.
That's it.
And they're going to ruin their college by arresting them. And I'm like, really? So we did all this for one joint?
Yeah, and the DUI ones are statistically a joke. I mean, they stop. I think for 4,000 people, they caught two or something. I mean, it's less than a percentage.
Yeah, they caught more kids with marijuana than they did alcohol.
Yeah, because you have to be super drunk to drive into one of those
checkpoints.
Well, it being publicized, all the bars say, hey, you can have your 2 drinks and that's it tonight. Yesterday you had 3, but today 2.
There's a stop up the street. Hey, I want to hear your argument because this is one that absolutely enrages me, and it is when we're talking about searches and things like that. The classic liberal argument is, well, if you've got nothing to hide.
Yeah.
Oh, where to even start? Sorry, I went down another line here. I mean, that's by definition, then our rights have been flipped on their head, right?
Right.
So I don't even think that's a right place to start.
No, but that's the argument you hear.
Yeah, if you have nothing to hide, let them look at the car.
Yeah, if you got nothing to hide, why can't they search your house?
Because I say so.
Right, but why?
Because.
Well, you're mean.
I'm making an argument like the government does.
Well,
because I say so and because.
And the biggest reason for me is I don't trust them.
No,
they could plant stuff.
They plant.
Oh, yeah?
And just quite frankly, it's are we free people anymore?
Yeah.
I mean, from the time we've bought our house in West Manchester, I mean, we've had one 10-hour lockdown. We've had there was something happening on our street last week.
Which street?
I'm up off Dubuque.
Dubuque.
And where there were 2 unmarked police cars, 4 other marked police cars, an ambulance, and I had to go mail stuff, and I was like, well, I'm going to leave. And they were all on the perimeter. I'm on a hill at the top behind the school, and with rifles out. And, it's 3 o'clock on I forget what day it was. And so when I was coming back, I thought, well, I'm going to stop and ask. And everyone was super polite. I thought that was great because sometimes when you ask, they're very rude. Yeah. And that makes me very angry. So everyone was super nice and polite. And they said, look, we had a call in for suspicious behavior. Don't worry, there's no danger to you. And I was like, well, I'm concerned about you. And and I'm just like, I grew up with that in South Africa. I grew up with that police state and the people coming and for your safety. And the next thing you know, everything's for your safety, but you're not really safer. You're just...
Well, Rep. Ammon had a bill in my committee, criminal justice on the House side, to identify and to stop these lockdowns in shelter in place.
Right.
In my committee, especially the Democrats and some of the Republicans, all said, well, what is, give me the definition of it. Well, it's not written anywhere. It's just a word that we're using.
That's even worse,
They
right?
killed the bill.
Because they started with the term lockdown, and then they sort of switched it to shelter in place. Now for the schools, I believe they're using another term. And so it's certainly something, I mean, it's not the number one issue, but it really is. If for me, I'm genuinely concerned about moving in a direction of a police state, right? Like a genuine police state. And there are some really big red flags for me now.
Well, I've been in the Caribbean. I can't remember which place I went to, but when I saw armed machine guns at the grocery store, I'm going, whoa.
What was that?
I can't remember which island it was.
Was it officers or private security?
Private security with the machine guns.
Yeah, but in some of the,
Belize, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I know down in Guatemala, I have friends who live down there, and we were there maybe 3 years ago, and I was surprised. Like at the gas stations, they have a private security guard who it wasn't a machine.
Oh, this was.
Oh, it might have been actually.
Yeah,
I
but
think
then
it was
I look
AK,
at
but-
but Venezuela's. That's what they have now,
right.
And it's because of socialism and Bernie Sanders. That he's pushing that agenda. Give your guns away, and that's what Venezuela's did.
Yeah.
They can't.
Well, it makes it a lot easier, right?
I know it's way off topic. Do you know, you have better connections than I do. How many, do you know what percentage of farmers have been killed in South Africa at this point?
I actually do not have a very good handle on what's going on, but I am going back for the month of December, for a whole month.
Take some videos and stuff.
And I want to do some of that. I've set up some meetings. I want to go meet like the mayor of Johannesburg, which is the biggest city in South Africa.
What week?
I'm going for the whole of December.
You can't. You gotta
Why
get.
not?
Well, you don't
I
have to.
bought my tickets months ago. I'm
'cause you
going.
'cause
It takes 24
well-
hours to get there. I have family I have to
Okay,
see.
so anyway,
It's happening.
what happens in this instance
Yes,
is you have to call and they'll swear you in January.
that is what I'm hoping.
They
yes.
will, yes, because I was sick when we got sworn in.
Because
one
I
day.
am going to be sworn in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we got if Lou D'Alessando's voting for Marcy's Law and stuff like that. That's it's like, come on.
I can only urge people to actually go look at his voting record. Everyone says he's a nice guy. That's true, but he votes 92% of the time Democratic, straight
For government control.
Yeah, for government control. And honestly, there are bills
And he's against
out there
any school
that-
choice.
Any school choice against
100% support for public schools, regardless of how they are effective or not.
and voted against the fetal homicide bill, voted against. Like, there are things that I think people, especially
Well, I think that-
Republicans who vote for him, would be shocked. And
I think that's
he
part-
votes against gun rights.
Yeah, every time.
Like,
I think that's the problem. There's a disconnect because I ran into that when I was running. There was a guy I was running against, and I would say, well, do you realize how he votes? And I would show him their voting record. Oh no, he doesn't vote like that. And I think people have to understand that just because somebody's a nice person,
right.
because there's a lot of people that I work with in the State House that are Democrats that I really like. They're very nice people.
I mean-
I just would never vote for them because I care too much about my constitutional rights.
Right. And exactly. And and it's not personal. So
No.
it's just an issue of, go look at his record.
Yeah, he is a very nice guy,
But he's been there for 20
wrong.
years, and for 20 years he's been raising our taxes and taking away our liberties. And if you're a Republican, you should vote for me.
Yes.
And honestly, if you're a Democrat or even a progressive, there's some things about me you're gonna like. So people need to, I'm
if you're
fresh blood, fresh face.
If you're a Democrat, instead of walking away, walk towards Carla.
Walk towards
Yes.
me. I'm gonna heal our state.
Yes.
She is going to heal our state of the hate and discontent.
Can Gary and I go with you to Africa?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and my 2 suitcases.
Yes.
That's how I arrived in America, with 2 suitcases. So.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
How old?
24 maybe.
Wow.
96.
So 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, 2 suitcases. I think we had $7,000, and
That's it?
came and built our life.
That is awesome.
In the best country
Is that
to be
because you
in.
were
So let's fight
because
for
you were
it.
a victim? You played the victim card, and that's how you.
How I
suc-
came here.
I know how you succeeded here. You played the victim card. And,
No, I worked hard, and
Oh!
we came and
Oh, you're-
I mean,
you're one of those. She's one of those.
Oh.
Yeah.
and I mean, the first place we stayed was an inner city slum. It cost $325 a month. The bathtub was in the kitchen. It was that kind of place.
Nice.
And
That's
and
free market.
got a job and started and worked our way up and worked hard.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, that seems like a little much.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, today it is.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Hey.
Well.
Anyway, we gotta go. Remember, what was it? What was the quote from V for Vendetta?
Remember the 6th. Well, it's usually the 5th,
Yeah, no,
but we're going
6th
to
of
say
November.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Get out there and vote.
Yes.
If you
All Republican.
if you don't know who to vote for, look it up or just vote Republican. But get out there and vote.
And actually, if you care about your rights, libertyballot.org or .com
Yeah.
is a good source for really pro-liberty people.
Yeah, the other source for more of John and I's conservatism is House Republican Alliance will tell you how people have voted, state reps have voted.
Well, I only did get a 99%.
You only got a 99%?
99!
I got 100%
I
one
don't know
year.
what
but
happened last year.
I got
100.
100% one year, but it was when I helped pick the votes. So, hey, anyway, we'll see you guys next week, and get out there and vote.